Iran's Revolutionary Guards hijacked a ship in the heart of the American blockade. The Iranians are signaling to Trump that even during the American blockade and even during his visit to China, they can still create headaches. And they hijacked a ship in the heart of the Persian Gulf. At the White House, they said that at the summit in Beijing, both sides agreed that Hormuz must remain open and that Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. They should never obtain nuclear weapons. And in the Persian Gulf, another maritime incident took place, and according to the report, unknown individuals took control of a ship and are sailing it towards Iran. Today, Iran deployed mini submarines in the Strait of Hormuz, and in addition to mines, in response to the United States nuclear submarine in the Strait of Gibraltar. And today, the United States Secretary of Energy warned that Iran is once again trying to break out towards a nuclear bomb, and that this is a real threat. So, are we heading towards a renewal of this war? The assessment is that Trump is getting closer to a decision on Iran. Israel's Prime Minister, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, said that significant days are ahead of us. Amir Pinto and Mati Shoshani is on his way to join me, but after he replaced me all last week, it is his time to rest. But actually today is in Lebanon, together with the IDF in an underground Hezbollah terror tunnel. And we'll bring you all the report once he gets out and brings us the footage. This is Boots on the Ground, and we bring you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel and also the whole truth about what's happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. And today is May 14th, and we will already bring you everything that you need to know, because the Iranians are not stopping at a red light, and they are not giving Trump any rest. Even during his festive visit to China, Iran continues to defy the President of the United States. According to a report by the British International Maritime Monitoring Organization, Iranian forces, and they are placing speedboats that raided a ship a short time ago that was anchored off the coast of the Emiratis, and they took control of it. The incident took place about 40 nautical miles off the coast of Fujairah in the Emiratis. Unidentified armed forces approached the ship that is anchored in the sea using speedboats, and it raided it at gunpoint. Iran announced the deployment of a fleet on Gadir submarines as also invisible guards. This is in the closed maritime space, and in response to the fact that last week the United States made a move that, in case involved Iran, signals strength when it positioned a nuclear submarine in Gibraltar. Experts claim that Iran's submarines are, in practice, outdated death traps with limited underwater endurance. United States President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping are meeting this morning on Thursday in Beijing in a tense and highly significant summit taking place in the shadow of the war in Iran, the struggle over Taiwan, and the technological battle between the two powers. But just as only Trump knows how to make a meaningful entrance when he arrives anywhere, in China too, Trump was welcomed with a festive ceremony at the Great Hall of the People on his first visit to China since 2017. And at the opening of the summit, Xi said that the world has reached a new crossroads and called on the two powers to succeed and prosper together. And the United States president responded by praising the fantastic relationship between the two nations. "You are a great leader," he called Xi Jinping. And Elon Musk also arrived. The CEO of NVIDIA summarized that the two leaders were amazing. And I have to say that I really like that Trump's ability to bring business people together in order to create connections for a stronger economic future in the world. The United States president made clear that he will win the war against Iran. And he also said in an interview that he doesn't think that we need help with Iran. We will win one way or another, peacefully or in a different way. Trump told reporters, and in the background, the tension in the Strait of Hormuz continues because the Revolutionary Guards in Iran are trying to tighten their control over the Strait of Hormuz through oil and gas shipments and agreements with Iraq and Pakistan. And at the same time, Washington has already announced that an agreement was reached with China, according to which no country will be able to collect passage fees in the waterway. Look, what's interesting here is that Trump did not come to China only to talk about China. Behind the ceremonies, the smiles, and the compliments to Xi Jinping, one very heavy issue is getting on the table in Iran. That issue is Iran. Because while the Revolutionary Guards are trying to signal that they are capable of surviving the economic and the military pressure in Washington and in Jerusalem, we understand that the campaign is not over. Iran is not really returning to the nuclear table. It is preparing for another round. And that is why Trump comes to China with a double message. On the one hand, an attempt to recruit Beijing into applying pressure on Tehran. On the other hand, a clear threat that if this is not resolved peacefully, it will be resolved in another way. And the story of the Strait of Hormuz is exactly that point. Iran is trying to turn this important energy route into a global bargaining chip. But once both the United States and China say that no country is allowed to charge a price for passage there, this is no longer only a military story. It is a war over who controls the global economy. And look, Trump is now facing two options: either to continue pressuring Iran through diplomacy, through sanctions and naval blockade, or to go for a short, strong, and clear military move, and then try to bring the Iranians to the table from a position of weakness. And here China also comes in. Trump's visit to Beijing is not only about trade, economy, and Taiwan. It is also an attempt to make the Chinese understand that Iran has become a global problem, not only an Israeli one, and not only an American one, because the moment that the Strait of Hormuz is hit and energy prices begin to shake the markets, it reaches every country, every family, and every supermarket. At the same time, harsh warnings are being heard in Washington. Iran is approaching very dangerous levels in its nuclear program, even if there is still another stage on the way to the weapon itself. That's why Trump is also watching the clock. The World Cup is approaching, and the United States is one of the main hosts. He will not want to enter this global celebration while a war with Iran is still open. In simple words, the question is no longer whether the pressure on Iran will continue, but whether it will remain economic and diplomatic, or, once again, turn into direct fire. Inside Iran, the internet is back, but only for the privileged. After months of almost complete disconnection from the network, Iran is allowing limited internet access only to professionals and to businesses and business owners who are willing to pay especially high prices, and this is causing public outage. But this is the problem in Iran right now. Anyone who says that this does not suit them or that they do not agree is judged as helping Israel and is executed in a shortened process. It is so sad. But the United Arab Emirates and Israel came out of this war with a relationship stronger than ever. That's amazing to see how God can make that happen. So following the exposure of Netanyahu's trip to the Gulf state, and despite the Emiratis' denial, Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi issued a threat. Prime Minister Netanyahu exposed what he knew. Cooperation with Israel is unforgivable. All the details are coming soon. And now, it turns out that there is serious urgency to eliminate the Revolutionary Guards because they are really, truly trying with all their might to obtain a nuclear bomb. It turns out that despite 40 days of intense American and Israeli strikes on the Islamic Republic, the American Energy Secretary warned in the Senate Tehran is a few weeks away from enriching a ton of uranium to military grade. A senior Iranian official threatened that if the pressure continues, his country may enrich to 90%, stating that we are ready for all scenarios. A new report from the American intelligence reveals that Iran managed to restore most of its missile sites within a short time. Contrary to everything that we thought, The explanation for the surprising strengthening of the Revolutionary Guards is happening. The strikes by the United States and Israel against the Revolutionary Guards damaged the senior command, but actually strengthened the organization's status inside Iran, accelerated the restoration of its leadership, and deepened its control over the centers of power. It's important to understand, in its war against Iran, the United States and Israel struck the Islamic Revolutionary Guards with force, damaging their command structure, intelligence networks, aerial and naval assets, as well as broader military infrastructure. The American and the Israeli strikes were meant to disrupt the organization's chain of command and led to the assassination of several senior figures, including the commander of the Revolutionary Guards himself. And contrary to the expectations that it would be weakened, the external pressure from the United States and Israel actually strengthened the central position of the Revolutionary Guards within Iran's order of power during this war. And we will soon get into what the next steps are in order to successfully eliminate the Revolutionary Guards in Iran and who is now in the IDF sights. I'm Yair Pinto, with me is Mati Shoshani, and we are on Boots on the Ground, bringing you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel and also the war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And I want to open for a moment with an important topic. Behind the scenes of the terrifying regime of the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, United States President Donald Trump is frustrated by the Iranian determination as the Revolutionary Guards continue to refuse every deal and every condition offered to them based on the assessment that they will be able to survive this war as a regime. 1 second before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click on the subscribe button. And most importantly, don't forget to look for me, Yair Pinto, and for Mati Shoshani on our social media platforms so you can get a view through our eyes of what it's like to live in Israel under this war. It seems that the Iranians are relying on two systems designed to guarantee the survival of the regime. The first is the dual government system that was built in Iran over many, many years. This is a system that made it possible to establish systems for the state and separately, also systems for the Revolutionary Guards. So, for example, there is an army for the state and there is an army for the Revolutionary Guards. There is a police for the state and there is the besieged forces for the Revolutionary Guards. There are ministers for the state, but they report to the supreme leader. There are presidents and ministers, but their deputies are loyal to the Revolutionary Guards. This recently allowed the Iranians to present negotiations outwardly through Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, while the Revolutionary Guards are the ones determining the strategy and buying time. As mentioned, for decades, the Iranians have presented a president elected in elections, while in practice, the Revolutionary Guards are the ones managing the security, the foreign, and the domestic policy. In fact, one of the senior Revolutionary Guards officials, the chairman of the country's National Security Council, even signed a letter by officials in the past against the Iranian president. The Revolutionary Guards, who were an arm of Ali Khamenei, climbed to the top of the hierarchy after he was eliminated. Contrary to the position of the clerks, they appointed Mujtaba as a puppet leader so that they could control all the systems in the country through his authorities. In addition, this is how they control the Iranian parliament, whose speaker, Mohammad Kalibaf, apparently no longer heads the negotiation delegation. This is how they control the government, whose head is in fact President Masoud Pezeshkian, whose path to Mujtaba is blocked. Even if he did indeed meet him, he encountered nothing more than a puppet, a mouthpiece for the Revolutionary Guards. This is also a government whose foreign minister is no more than an errand boy and has already been threatened several times recently by the parliament with a field trial or removal from office. The Revolutionary Guards also control the Expediency Discriminant Council, the supreme arbitration institution that decides all disputes. In the past, it was under the supreme leader, but today it is under the leader who himself is under the guards. They also control the judiciary, and through it, the entire court system in the country, alongside the assembly of experts, some of whose 88 members opposed Khamenei's appointment. They also control the Guardian Council, 6 of whose members are appointed and owe their loyalty to the Revolutionary Guards. This entire system rests on the alternative shadow, the economy that the Revolutionary Guards built over decades. This economy relies on crypto trading. Recently, a cybersecurity company that works in the field found a 700% increase in crypto transactions in the Iranian sphere, estimated at $154 billion. This is happening, amongst other things, through the Nobitex platform, which is affiliated with the Revolutionary Guards. The system also relies on dozens of oil transports and shipping companies that bypass the sanctions, and also on shadow banking and a black economy. All this stuff laid a hidden bridge between the Iranians and the financial world and the banks, as well as dozens of shell companies. There's no doubt that Israel and the United States hit hard the branches of Iran, even at the trunk. But it turns out that the roots of the Revolutionary Guards penetrate deep down to the bedrock. It may be time to go after the national infrastructure in Iran, including the oil fields. And now, that's deep into what's happening. But first, we want to invite you to take part in what's happening here in Israel. We want you to be part of something that is rooted deep in the land and in our hearts. The Rebuild Israel campaign continues, bringing life back to Israel's north. Along Israel's northern border, an area that is marked by war, displacement, and loss, we are planting an apple orchard, not as a symbol for a single moment, but as part of a long-term commitment to rebuild what was damaged. This orchard is more than just agriculture. It creates jobs for the local families. It helps communities return and rebuild. And it sends a clear message to the people of Israel. You are not alone. When you donate, you're not just giving, you are rebuilding. Your support puts trees in the ground, it restores livelihoods, and transforms land scarred by war into a land that grows again. This is how renewal takes root. This is how Israel rebuilds after war. Join us in restoring the North and strengthening the future of the land of Israel. Go now to tbn.org/rebuildisrael. Again, that's tbn.org/rebuildisrael, or call 800-804-7895. Again, that's 800-804-7895. Rebuild the land, restore hope, bless the future. Now let's get back to the news, because a vessel that was anchored off the coast of the United Arab Emirates, about 38 nautical miles northeast of Fujairah, was seized by an unauthorized party and is now moving towards the Iranian waters. The details about the identity of the ship, its flag, and the crew members have not yet been published, but the direction is clear. Once again, the Strait of Hormuz. Once again, the Revolutionary Guards. Once again, an attempt to test how far one can go inside the American blockade. So, is this just another maritime incident, or a direct signal to Trump while he's sitting with the president of China in Beijing? I'm Meir Pinto, and this is Boots on the Ground. This report begins at sea, but it does not stay there, because what's happening around Fujairah, Hormuz, the Gibraltar, is no longer a local event. It is the line of contact between a military war, an energy crisis, global diplomacy, and the internal struggle over the future of the regime in Iran. In the last hours, it was reported that the vessel was hijacked while it was anchored, and that it is being dragged or led towards the coast of Iran. In the United Arab Emirates, they are speaking about unauthorized crew members. The initial assessment points to the involvement of the naval forces of the Revolutionary Guards. This is still not officially closed, but the pattern is very familiar. Fast boats, a quick takeover, threats with weapons, a change of the course, and then an attempt to turn the ship into a bargaining chip. The incident took place in an especially sensitive area. HIJACKS is not just another port city. It's an important maritime gateway outside the Strait of Hormuz, a point that allows the Gulf states to breathe even when the strait itself becomes an Iranian field of extortion. And this is exactly the message that Tehran is trying to send. Even if the United States imposes a blockade, even if China applies pressure behind the scenes, even if Israel strikes the Iranian capabilities, the Revolutionary Guards are still capable of creating an operational headache within minutes. And at the same time, Iran announced the deployment of Ghadr-type midget submarines in the area of the Strait of Hormuz. The commander of the Iranian Navy called them the dolphins of the Persian Gulf. He presented them as an invisible force, one that is supposed to deter the warships and complicate the activity of the foreign fleets. But behind the statement, there is a more complex picture. These submarines are small, designed for shallow waters, and operate at a limited range. They can pose a threat to merchant ships, carry out intelligence missions, or secretly lay naval mines. But against an advanced American Navy, that's a completely different mission. A diesel-electric submarine needs to charge its batteries. That's in order to do that, it needs to rise to use a snorkel within a few days. And at that moment, it leaves a signature. Radars can detect it. Patrol aircrafts can locate it. Listening systems can hear it. That's why the Iranian move, it's a combination of real capability and also lots of propaganda. Yes, the submarines can interfere. Yes, they can threaten a civilian ship, but they do not change by themselves the balance of power against the United States. And the Americans, they answer in their own language. The Sixth Fleet confirmed that an American Ohio-class nuclear submarine docked in Gibraltar. The very publication is the message. Usually, submarines like these operate in complete silence. They're meant to disappear, not to appear in a picture. When Washington exposes its presence, it is not doing it for a nice public relations. It is telling Tehran, beneath the surface of the water, there is a completely different game. You present midget submarines in the Gulf. We present a survivable, long-range, strategic capability that is almost impossible to detect. Here, one needs to understand the deep gap. The Iranians operate in the shallow waters of Hormuz. The Americans project power from the Mediterranean, from the ocean, and from the broad NATO space. It's not the same league, but it is still dangerous because sometimes the weaker player is exactly the one looking for a small incident that will force the stronger one to respond. And on the ground, the American blockade continues to work. Since the beginning of the blockade on Iran's port, the American military has blocked dozens of commercial vessels, allowed passage to vessels connected to humanitarian aid, and disabled ships that did not obey the instructions. And at the beginning of the week, 2 commercial vessels turned back after radio contact and warning and fire from light weapons took place. This is not a field war like an airstrike. There is no major fire here at every single moment. There's a maritime control, inspections, blocking, warnings, and enforcement. It is slower, but the economic chokehold can be very deep. And this chokehold hits the heart of the Revolutionary Guards. Alongside the maritime incident, the United States is preparing for the next stage. The Pentagon signed major procurement frameworks for more than 10,000 low-cost cruise missiles. The goal is clear: not only expensive and precise missiles in small numbers, but mass production that is faster and cheaper. This is a conceptual shift. In the confrontation with Iran, It is not enough to hold the advanced weapons. Quantity is needed. Stockpiles are needed. The ability is needed to apply pressure over time without emptying the warehouses after a few days of fighting alone. The companies leading the move include names like Anduril and Lidus. There is also a separate agreement for the development of Blackbeard hypersonic missiles. In addition, the United States, the Air Force, is planning to integrate autonomous aircrafts that will accompany F-35 aircrafts. In simple words, the United States is preparing itself with the ability to flood the battlefield, not only to strike one target, but to wear down the defense systems, open penetration routes, and sustain a longer campaign. From Iran's point of view, this is a worrying message. If fighting resumes, Washington does not want to depend only on premium missiles. It wants a large industrial and fast arsenal. But while the Americans are building mass, another process is taking place in Iran. The strikes by Israel and the United States hit the Revolutionary Guards. They hit senior command, intelligence networks, air and naval assets, and military infrastructure. Amongst the senior officials that were terminated, the commander of the Revolutionary Guards, Muhammad Pakpour, was also mentioned. But the organization did not collapse. It quickly appointed new senior officials, including Ahmed Vahidi as the organization's commander. And inside Iran, the external pressure actually gave the Revolutionary Guards another excuse to concentrate power. This is a dangerous paradox. From the outside, the organization is struck in order to weaken it. From the inside, the organization uses the war in order to take control of more decision-making centers. It presents itself as the guardian of the state. It pushes civilian institutions aside. It strengthens its control over the negotiations, the economy, security, and communications. This is how Iran becomes less and less a state with an army, and more a military system that runs a state. And this is the importance of understanding the negotiations. When an Iranian representative speaks about Hormuz, he's not speaking only on behalf of the foreign ministry. Behind him stands the Revolutionary Guards. Who profits from control over the maritime space, from smuggling, from sanctions, and from the gray economy? That's why the Iranian demand to collect payment from ships that want to pass through Hormuz is not only a strange legal demand. It is a proposal to turn an international route into a source of income and a tool of control. At the summit in Beijing, Trump and Xi discussed exactly this. The White House said that both sides agreed that the Strait of Hormuz must remain open and that Iran must not have a nuclear weapon. Xi also opposed the militarization of the strait and any attempt to collect transit fees. This is an important moment. China does not suddenly become an ally of Israel or the United States. It acts according to cold Chinese interests. But that interest is harmed when its ships are stuck, when its exports are hurt, and when the world buys less because of an energy crisis. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that China needs to take a more active role in calming the crisis. He explained that the war and the blockade in the Gulf also harmed the Chinese economy, because countries that buy less energy, less food, and fewer products will also buy less from China. This is how Hormuz becomes a Chinese issue, not out of love for the Middle East, because this route touches Beijing's pockets. And at the same time, Iran is trying to punish those that it sees as partners of Israel. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi threatened that anyone involved in a conspiracy with Israel would be punished. The threat came after reports about security ties between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, including visits by the Israeli security officials in the period before the campaign in Iran. In Abu Dhabi, they denied some of these reports, but the very Iranian threat exposes the sensitive nerve. Tehran fears a regional space in which Israel, the United States, and the Gulf states are building a common security language. The Iranians see this as a strategic threat. not only because of an aircraft or a defense system, but because of a political change in the Middle East. And before we continue, this is your moment to help us. Help us by sharing the truth. If this report helps you understand what's really happening in the Middle East, give it a like. Share this video with friends, with family, and do not forget to click on the subscribe button for TBN Israel. Boots on the Ground is meant to bring you the reality from the field in a clear voice, without unnecessary noise and without the filters. Every share helps one more person understand what stands behind the headlines. In Israel, all of this is being followed from closed discussion rooms. The Prime Minister convened a limited security consultation with senior officials in the defensive establishment and selected ministers. The issues raised there are clear: Iran, the northern arena, and the possibility that an American decision will come in the coming days. Around the Prime Minister, the period is being described as sensitive and significant. That sentence sometimes sounds general, but today it sits on a very concrete reality. A ship is hijacked near HIJACKS. Iran presents submarines in the Strait. The United States presents a nuclear submarine in Gibraltar. The Pentagon builds a new missile stockpile, and China enters the picture because it too cannot allow itself to close Hormuz. The northern arena in Israel reminds us that even if the headline is Iran, Tehran's hands are very close to Israel's borders. An explosive Hezbollah drone struck inside the Israeli territory and 3 civilians were wounded. At the same time, the IDF warned residents in villages in southern Lebanon and acted against the Hezbollah infrastructure. It is the same campaign, only at another end of it, at the sea. The Revolutionary Guards are trying to disrupt the shipping. In Lebanon, Hezbollah is trying to wear down the north. In Iran, the leadership is trying to survive the blockade. And in Washington, Trump is getting closer to a decision. The question is not whether there is tension. The question is who will choose to turn it into the next move. If Iran continues with hijackings, submarine deployments, threats against the Emiratis, and games around Hormuz, it may push Trump to restart Project Freedom in the broader form of it. This time, it will not only be escorting ships. The president has already hinted that escorting will be only a small part of this move. And if that move begins, Israel will need to be ready for every chain reaction: missiles from Iran, UAVs from Iraq, fire from Lebanon, an attempt to strike in the Gulf, or another attack on another ship. This war is being managed like a chessboard, but the pieces move at a speed of an attack boat. One decision at sea can turn into a diplomatic explosion in Beijing, an American air response, and also fire on the north. Iran is trying to show that it still controls the pace. But every action like this increases the chance that the pace will slip out of its hands. Will the hijacking of the ship near HIJACKS be another bargaining chip, or a moment when the naval blockade turns into a more open campaign? So keep spreading the truth. Follow us, and most importantly, don't forget to click on the subscribe button so that you stay tuned to what's happening in Israel and never miss another update of Boots on the Ground. Keep looking for us, Mati Shoshani and Yair Pinto, on our social media platforms. And best thing that you can do is pray for the situation. Seriously. We're calling on you to ask God to intervene in all these hard decisions that our leaders need to make. Let's also pray for the actual people that are affected by this war. Let's pray for the children of Israel that are under rockets still in the northern parts of Israel. Let's pray for the rebuilding of those communities that were hit by direct missiles. Let's keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.